Hello, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. Clown Fiesta Podcast, episode 24. This is our 24th Clown Fiesta already. Blue Jay here, J&T with me, of course. And because it's our 24th, you may as well grab a beer, sit back, relax, and let J&T and I break down the off-season rumors that are slowly becoming facts. Maybe not actual signings yet, but for those of you that don't know, yesterday was the first official day of free agency, and so teams have started to announce things that we had previously heard to be as rumors. And that's basically what this episode's going to be about, is just breaking down all of the offseason stuff. I think we have a pretty good idea by now of what the 2021 rosters for the LCS are supposed to look like. Almost everything, pretty much just Golden Guardians, right? Is the only team that has a lot of question marks. J&T, I'll throw it over to you. Do you have anything you want to shout out? And if not, I'll let you just get us into our first team and get us started.
Yeah, I mean, I think we'll just jump right into it. We're just going to go top down in terms of alphabetical order of LCS teams. And to kick it off, we have what you could say are our biggest spenders in the 2021 offseason. 100 Thieves, they're rocking a pretty much completely revamped roster built pretty much around Someday and signing the strengths of the Golden Guardians roster. So you have Sunday in the top lane, Closer jungle, Demonte mid, FBI ADC, and who he supports. So, it's just old Golden Guardians with Someday on it.
Yeah, you'll notice there's not a lot of change to the Golden Guardians roster. However, it's more so that they've just all swapped teams. And maybe I do want to correct what you said. You did say one of the biggest spenders, or maybe you said biggest spender, but let's just say one of the biggest.
I said one of.
Okay, my mistake then. Sorry, I misheard. But yeah, definitely one of the biggest spenders. And this to me for 100 Thieves fans is like so like I can breathe because I think on this show about a month ago you and I were talking, and I remember saying we are going to learn a lot about the 100 Thieves organization this year based off what they do in the offseason, because we knew that Someday was no longer going to take up an import slot, and we knew that there was this fan perception that they were just a content org or an apparel org, and that, well, they wanted to change that. And so I said, if they're going to change that, this is their chance. Now that you're going to have Someday, who's a great player in the league, no longer take up an import slot, it's time to go after some other really good players. And, well, clearly they did. Golden Guardians was a great team last split, and they improved on that, right?
Yeah, before free agency really started, people were a little bit unsure of, kind of the direction this team was going to go. They originally in the supposed bidding wars for both of FBI and Johnsun. But up until at least a few days ago, nobody really was under the impression that this team was going after the majority of the Golden Guardians roster. It was kind of a last-minute thing over the weekend that Travis Gafford introduced that, reportedly 100 Thieves was going to sign the majority of the Golden Guardians players, two of them through trade in terms of Closer and FBI, and two of them in free agency with Demonte and Huni. So, 100 Thieves really just like hitting it out of the park here in free agency. Like you're pretty much picking up the best, the I was gonna say like the most improved team of the year, yeah. And you're building it around your already best player that you had on the team in Someday, who you can now argue maybe he's not even the best player on this team now. Maybe it's somebody like Closer or somebody like FBI.
Yeah, and the other thing too is, like, again, we, like you said, pretty much we knew that they were looking at FBI. We knew that they were looking at players like Closer, but the other thing is too is that a lot of people will think that Golden Guardians also sold the contract from Huhi, but Huhi was a free agent, right? So
yeah, I said that.
Okay,
but both of Demonte and Huhi they signed or are reported to sign as free agents.
Yeah.
Those two haven't actually been officially confirmed yet, but both FBI and Closer have been by Jacob Wolf, and even 100 Thieves announced it on their Twitter.
Yeah, and the point that I'm trying to get at here, though, is that these guys had the option to go to other teams, and they chose that they wanted to go to 100 Thieves because, well, clearly they were very happy with what they accomplished last year. And why wouldn't you be, right? This was one of the best looking teams from North America in playoffs. They barely didn't make it to Worlds, and obviously they believe that they can still make it to Worlds, and I think a lot of other people believe the same thing. And so I think it's great. I think it's really exciting that this team's going to run it back, and it's like, I think I am with all the 100 Thieves fans in that sigh of relief that it's like, thank God this team gets another shot, because when we heard Golden Guardians was shopping around these players, you thought, well, maybe they don't all get their shot, but it definitely looks like they're going to.
Yeah, I guess the biggest question for me with this roster is if, they'll just be able to repeat their success. They've only been successful for half a split, and while they did have some really great performances and they did give reason for a lot of people to be hopeful of this future, there are plenty of examples in the past where, a team or certain players have gotten really hyped up based on a single playoff performance run or the way that the
Mhm.
team finished. I'm kind of thinking of season 9 in the summer split CLG, how they finished fourth in the regular season and then just became a huge dumpster fire in season 10. I'm not
True.
expecting that from this from this new 100 Thieves roster with the former Golden Guardians players, but we will have to see if they are able to repeat the success. And there's always a question of like how metas suit certain players and if the whole season 11 changes will affect that in any way.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And another thing that I wanted to point out, I'm losing my train of thought now, right as I was about to say something. Mm. Gotta hate it. Oh, anyways, some of the criticism around this team. So I remember the two things that I was going to say. One of them is that I want to remind people that this team actually wasn't great all of summer. They finished their regular season 9-9. So people that look on paper and see a 9-9 team, they're probably not thinking, why is this team so hyped up? This team had a very rough start to summer. I think they were 1-5. And so if people are wondering why we're hyping up a 9-9 team, it's because of how good they were in the back half of summer and in playoffs when it really matters most, right?
Yeah, if I'm not mistaken, they went 6-3 in the second half of the summer split. They originally 3-0 TSM in the first round of the round robin of playoffs, lost to Team Liquid to drop down to the losers bracket, and then lost to TSM in the rematch, but still had a very close best of 5 series that honestly could have went either way.
And as most people remember, TSM went on to win the LCS summer split and playoffs. So clearly a team that was able to have some fight in them. And the other thing that I've heard some people talk about is basically how they thought it was strange that 100 Thieves had been given so much credit for being this org to go out and create 100 Next and have such a good development system and then really not use any of it and go out and buy a whole team. And to them I say, I don't care. Honestly, yeah, like even if they even if they do have a great development system, you don't just develop in a year, right? It doesn't just happen like it doesn't. You don't just snap your fingers and it works that like that. This is a team or a Papa Smithy even probably recognize. Look, we have a shot to be a good team and have a decent Worlds run. Let's take it. And so even though people are going to be upset that they didn't use their development pieces, so to speak, I think they made the right move. And not to mention, I also want to remind people that we did see one of their development pieces last year in Poom, and it didn't really look too good, if I'm being completely honest. And I'm
Yeah.
not saying that all four other players on 100 Thieves would have performed to the same level as Poom, but you do have to realize that a development piece doesn't mean that they're going to pop off once they hit the LCS. It is a prospect, and a prospect is usually really high ceiling, really low floor. So, anyways, I commend 100 Thieves for taking their shot. I think that they have a really exciting roster going into 2021.
Yeah, I mean, my only gripe with the whole topic of them not utilizing their academy or 100 next players is if they were to have filled their LCS rosters with a bunch of recycled veterans. And if that was the case, then yes, I might be a little bit upset, and I can understand people's frustrations with not utilizing these younger players. But like you gotta just look at it here. You pretty much got the fourth best team in the LCS, and you then upgraded that roster at top lane, which was their
Yeah.
weakest point of the map. If you look back to a couple of those playoff series, Hanser really got exposed in a couple of those games and was the main reason that they lost a few of those games, constantly getting picked off in the top lane. I remember he had a couple games of Gangplank in the playoffs. He got picked a lot in the side lane. So you're looking at your Golden Guardians fourth place team. You upgraded the roster, and you're giving this team more time to sort of gel and develop together. So, you know, they made it like bandits. They might have had
Yeah.
to sign a bunch of zeros at the end of their like on the end of their bills, but if it all works out, it's going to be worth it for sure. This will be a contender.
Yeah, and like I said, even though you mentioned all those zeros that they need to add to the checks that they're sending, I think that's really encouraging. Like I was saying before, for 100 Thieves fans, this is the team that was a budget roster for the last year and didn't really do much of anything with it. And so it's nice to see that when they have their shot, they're going to take it. So yeah, props to them.
Okay. we'll move on now to our next team. We got Cloud9. Very different direction that they have sort of gone with after, they had announced that they weren't going to make any roster changes in the entirety of the offseason. And then after obviously finding out about the news of the OPL and them becoming sort of part of North America and OPL players no longer counting towards an import slot, Cloud9 sort of recognizing that, making the tough decision to sell Licorice at a high and bring in a new younger player in Fudge who performed very well in Academy over the past year. And then we hear after that apparently they are the front runners to sign Perks. As you all know, Perks now wants to play mid lane again, and obviously he cannot do that on G2 because they already have Caps, who is, in my opinion, a better mid laner than Perks and a better mid laner than Perks ever was. And Carlos making the decision not to sell Perks to Fnatic, his rival and main competitor in the LEC. So Cloud9 sort of jump out as the front runners to sign him, and from what we've heard so far, Cloud9 are still and have made verbal agreements to acquire Perks from G2. So this would put the new Cloud9 roster as Fudge in the top lane, formerly their Academy top laner, Blabber in the jungle, Perks in mid lane from G2, Sven, and Vulcan.
Yeah, and so there's a couple of things that's funny about this. One, like you mentioned, like we're not going to make any roster changes. We're going to keep the same roster. We're going to run it back next year. And then, of course, the OPL thing gets announced, and they're like, oh, well, now we have the option to sell Licorice, like you mentioned. So they go ahead and do that. But this Perks thing is like that has nothing to do with the OPL thing. So even if the OPL thing didn't happen, I still feel like they actually broke their promise anyways. Like, Niski was an import, so is Perks. So even them saying that they're not going to make any moves, like, it's just something that you probably just shouldn't ever do, because like it made sense with the Fudge thing. Okay, they had an excuse, the OPL rule change, blah blah blah. But the Perks one is totally out of left field. And to be like, we're not going to make any changes, and then go ahead and make probably the biggest splash in free agency history for the LCS is totally like, night and day anyway.
Yeah, it kind of just seems like, although Cloud9 did say that there were going to be no changes, they kind of just pounced on the opportunity, and they saw reasons to make changes to the roster if they are improvements.
And why not? Like, if you have the option to get Perks, like, why wouldn't you get him, right?
Yeah.
He is talked about as the greatest Western player of all time. Now, I think that you could argue Caps, and that's an argument you can have all day. But for sure, you're getting an absolute stud in the mid lane. And this is just an absolutely crazy signing. And we talked about last week how that signing could cost around $5 million just to purchase the contract from G2, and then Cloud9 would, on top of that, have to pay Perks' contract as well. So basically, Cloud9's really throwing their wallet at a solution for the 2021 season.
Yeah, it'll be upwards pretty much of somewhere in the ballpark of $5 million, because the reported buyout is just under $5 million, and then you're obviously going to have to pay him a top dollar LCS contract. So you'd probably be in the range around anywhere between $5 and $6.5 million just in this first year of acquiring Perks.
Yeah. Okay, so now let's talk about how good do we think this team is going to be? Because a lot of people have this team as the front runner, as the team that they expect to win the LCS. No longer spring, no longer summer split. They have this team as the favorite to win the split. It's not a split, the season, I suppose. What are your thoughts on this? Do you think Cloud9 is the front runner?
Yeah, if they acquire Perks, in my mind, they're definitely the front runner. It's definitely up for debate. I don't think it's like a super concrete answer in terms of who will be the favorite. I know going into summer split last year, everyone had Cloud9 pegged as a favorite by far and away, but I do not think it's the case this year. There still are going to be the question marks of Fudge and how he will compare to Licorice. And, obviously he's been dominating Academy for the better part of a year now, but will he make that transition to LCS caliber players? And, will he just kind of mesh with the team in general? And same goes for Perks. Obviously, we know probably moving into the season, he will be the best mid laner in the league. But again, it's all dependent on, will he mesh with Cloud9? How will everything work? How will the meta kind of pan out? Because to be honest, the meta was not very favorable to Cloud9. It seemed like they didn't have the perfect read on both drafting and the meta when playoffs rolled around, and we saw teams, able to beat them, able to overtake them, and Cloud9 ended up missing out on Worlds. But looking at this roster, like this is a roster that has to make worlds. Like this is a worlds or bust roster.
Yeah, if you don't make worlds, that's probably an embarrassment. I think that's fair to say. The thing for me is that even though I do have them as probably the best team in North America, I'd probably have to put a little bit more thought into it if I'm being completely honest. But the thing about for me is that it's not so automatic, if you ask me. And the reason why it's not automatic is because, like, well, one of the things that you just mentioned is Fudge is a player that we haven't seen play in the LCS before. And even though Cloud9 does have a great track record of, bringing up talent and making them look good, and they normally do play well when they hit the LCS, that's still a big question mark. And then I think people are kind of forgetting when Cloud9 started to look bad last year, it was in the jungle. Like the biggest problem for Cloud9 last year was Blabber when they started to look bad. And well, guess who's starting next year? Blabber. So I don't think this is like a, problem solved, ready to go. Nisqy was not the problem. I need to emphasize that Nisqy was actually probably one of the better mids that we had in North America. And there's so much talk about how Nisqy's I've seen people call Nisqy an NA reject, which is like, I don't even, like, holy man. I saw that in another Discord. I didn't waste my time. But the point is like, Nisqy isn't the problem, and replacing Nisqy with Perks is an upgrade, but Blabber still needs to show up and show the spring version of Blabber that we saw. And then the other thing, like you mentioned, is you need to mesh with your team. Perks is being talked about as one of the greatest Western players of all time. But guess what? I'll just do a quick little rewind to 2018 for TSM. We've heard best in the West talks before, with the current AD carry that Cloud9 has being Zven. When Sven and Mithy came over to TSM, the best in the West bot lane didn't really look so hot for TSM. So I think there's a lot of question marks with this roster. Do I think they're great? Yes. Should they be great? Absolutely. But the will they be great is not 100% answered.
Yeah, I definitely view Perks as a massive upgrade over Nisqy in terms of like comparing Nisqy's performance in the summer playoffs. Because I don't know, me personally, I think Nisqy was just as at fault as Blabber in terms of their playoff performances, although maybe it was a little more of it was Blabber. Nisqy definitely was not performing very well himself. But, if things mesh well, this team is definitely a team that I think can go far internationally.
Yeah, and just so people know, because there's a lot of times that people say if this team performs well and if this and if that. This is an important time to say the if, though, because the if is significant. Like, you could say that about any team. If I say, well, if Impact has a bounce back season, then Evil Geniuses are going to be great. Well, okay, that's like an if, like whatever. But this is an if that, like, this if could mean so much for North America. You can make a significant run. And so I think bringing up that if is very, very relevant.
Mm-hmm. All right.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, I was gonna say move on to our next team. Next up we got CLG. Still only one question mark about the CLG roster, but for now we have Finn in the top lane, Broxa jungle, Pobelter mid, question mark at AD carry, and Smoothie at support. Pobelter and Smoothie, they're both kind of viewed. There's not. People are confident that this is the roster that they are going to be rolling with, but there hasn't been really any news from CLG if they are going to be replacing mid or jungle. But the assumption right now is they're just going to hold on to Pobelter and Smoothie and stick them in with the new additions of Finn and Broxa.
Yeah, and with this team, like, if you were going to keep players, it was going to be those two guys, Pobelter and Smoothie. Like, don't get me wrong, they struggled with other teams, just along with the rest of the members on their team as well. But these are guys that have a really good track record of performing well in the LCS, and I don't think people are ready to give up on them yet. Whereas, like, last year, Ruin looked pretty bad. Wiggly looked really, really bad, and Stixay didn't even look like Stixay anymore. Stixay used to be being like 4 or 5 years ago, but used to be one of the best AD carries in the league, and he has significantly fallen off to the point that he even got benched. I think in spring he got benched for a game or two. Honestly, this makes sense to me to keep Pobelter and to keep Smoothie, because I don't think there are that many other options. But I want to hear your thoughts a little bit on their new acquisitions being Finn and Broxa, because those are pretty interesting. And I think a couple weeks ago, or even let's even go back a month ago, if somebody were to have said CLG Finn or CLG Broxa, that would have been crazy news, right?
Yeah, I think I'll start up with Finn. I think Finn, He's obviously like a decent player. He was the weakness on Rogue come the summer playoffs and at Worlds even. He definitely, wasn't performing the best, but he's still a solid top laner in the LEC. And I think he was sort of a product of like the mindset of the LEC where, okay, we're going to like revamp a roster. We're going to bring in rookies. And Finn was just kind of like left without a team because other teams had gone different directions to either try out younger players or attempt to acquire, potentially better top laners from elsewhere. Like I think of Broken Blade potentially going to Schalke, or I'm missing another one. Ottawamne going to Rogue to replace him. Yeah, Ottawamne going to Rogue to replace him. So it kind of just felt like Finn kind of just he got left without an LEC team, and CLG was willing to pick him up.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I think Finn is actually a good top laner. I think that too many people are going to hold on to a poor World's performance, but you need to remember, you're going up against some really freaking good top laners. I don't need to go through the whole list of World's top laners, but let's just remember Nuguri and Bin were there. And like these are guys, like that's the level of play that you need to play up to. And I don't like even if you're not to like I don't know. I don't think it's fair to compare Finn to that when you're playing in the LCS specifically. This is a huge upgrade over Ruin. And for me, I think that's the thing that you want to see for CLG is you just want to see improvements because this team looked all like bad all of season 10. So to me, I think it's a really great signing. And I think the same goes for Broxa. Wiggly was really, really bad. And I know Broxa got a lot of flack on playing for Team Liquid. He was definitely the player that was criticized the most. But this guy's still a good jungler. Like at worst, he's a middle of the pack LCS jungler, and Wiggly was probably the worst jungler in the league. So I'm looking at
Same
this
goes
roster.
for Ruin.
Yeah, I'm looking at this roster and I'm going, not bad, CLG, not bad at all. You and I have flamed CLG so much on this podcast. It's refreshing to see that they actually have a chance to improve and be a decent team. Do I think they're going to win anything in the LCS? I don't think they're going to win, honestly. I don't even know if they'll win a playoff round, but I think they have a chance, and I don't think they really had a chance last year. So a lot of props to the CLG management and Tafo Kintz. I don't know if that's how you pronounce his name. I know, but the GM for CLG, a lot of props to them for being able to put together what seems to be a respectable roster. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think, basically the way that I view the CLG roster is it has boatloads of potential on it. If Broxa is, if he's able to return to his former self and maybe get that bit of aggressive style back, if Finn is able to bounce back from his poor performances at the end of the summer split, and if Pobelter, all Pobelter needs to do is do the same thing that he did last split, and Smoothie, potentially with a new bot lane partner, if they can improve, even just a little bit, you're looking at like a fringe playoff team, and trust me, that is much better than being what you could consider the joke of the LCS for the last, I don't know, since like season 8.
Yeah. Honestly, here's the thing though, and the other thing about Broxa too is that I need to remind people that it was not a Broxa is bad thing. It was he doesn't mesh well with the Team Liquid playstyle. Broxa was a guy that was known for playing very aggressive, being like invading very often and playing the Lee Sin and stuff like that. And like TL just played too slow for that to work. And I think that's why he got so much shit for his performance. I'm not completely defending his performance on TL because there were some games that he were pretty lackluster. But again, I think that having a different team is exactly what Broxa needs, and I hope to see some good things out of it.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, like, Brox, he really just never got like a fair chance with Team Liquid. His spring split was, the spring split of Team Liquid was pretty much derailed by the whole visa issues and Broxa not being able to practice with the team, and kind of came in and missed the first 3 weeks of LCS and couldn't really acclimate in time to be able to make a playoff push. And, in the summer split, yes, he had some up and down performances, looked pretty bad at the start, to be honest, but, steadily climbed his way up towards the end of the season. And, like, people, like, this guy just went to Worlds, and he had a decent performance, and he almost made it out of group. So if you're a CLG fan...
Still finished first as well in the LCS, like in the regular season, that is.
Yeah, and then they were third in playoffs. Like, if you're a CLG fan, you should be really happy with the result of what you got in this offseason, regardless of who you get at ADC, because you've got upgrades, massive upgrades in top and jungle, and, presumably with the better, more talent on your team, that will aid both Pobelter and Smoothie to perform even better, because, you got to look at it like Pobelter was doing the best that he could with really like underperforming players in top jungle and ADC. And when you're put on a team with just generally better players, your play is also going to elevate.
Yeah. And the last thing that I want to highlight with this team is, even though we have a question mark for our AD carry, we don't know exactly who that's going to be. It is projected that is going to be Wild Turtle. That's the best guess as of right now. There hasn't been any official things, but from basically looking at Travis Gafford's sheet, like his Excel sheet of like who's expected to go where, he's got Wild Turtle going to CLG as like a 50% confidence. So it's kind of like a 50-50. And most of the other teams have their 80 carries locked up. And if I just want to remind people, Turtle had a pretty good season. Another guy who went to Worlds and really had a bounce back season as well. So if you were to throw Turtle in this lineup, it looks even better for CLG. So yeah, I think that this is no longer a joke of a team, and I think that you could realistically look at CLG as finishing somewhere in the middle of the pack.
Yeah, the only other name I would throw out there that has been rumored potentially is Deftly. I
Yep.
believe he's currently on EG Academy, but he's seen some sparse LCS play on Cloud9 and on Golden Guardians, and again, I would also agree that he is at the minimum a side grade from Stixxay. So either one of those 280 carries would be beneficial to this team.
Yep, completely agree.
All right, next up we have Dignitas. Just recently, I believe a few hours before we're filming this episode, it just got announced that Johnsun will be no longer on Dignitas and will be moving on to FlyQuest. So that sort of puts this Dignitas roster at the rumored roster is Hanser top lane, Dardoch jungle, question mark in mid lane, Sneaky making his potential return to the LCS and 80 carry, and Afremu support.
Yeah, like, okay, this is like a fun roster. Let's be honest. Like, we harped on them all last week about getting rid of Johnsun. Do we think that's a good move? No, we don't. But Sneaky's back, man. And I can't wait to see a Sneaky Afremu bot lane. That's freaking awesome, is it not?
Yeah, it's good.
Yeah, like, to me, I think it's really
We'll
exciting.
get some
I
good
do.
stream highlight videos.
Yeah, and that's the disappointing thing for this roster. It's like, okay, you pretty much just sold out to get some extra clicks and some extra impressions for your sponsors, which is like, eh, if that's what you gotta do, fine. But I don't think that's what you gotta do. Is really what it comes down to. I don't think Dignitas was that far off from being a good team last split. We mentioned Johnsun was great. Afro was awesome. Even Hanser, who is like, he's another 50% chance to go there, or 50% confidence to go to Dig. Hanser had a great season as well, and I actually think Dardoch played well also. So like, this team to me wasn't very far off from being a competitor, and we see that question mark in the mid lane. Are there a lot of mids available? Not really. So maybe that is the reason that they have for selling Johnsun, but it's just a little disappointing to see, like, you have young talent and you're just going to sell it away, It feels almost like a waste.
Yeah, there's not a lot of, well, like you just mentioned, there's not really a lot of, at least in terms of North American mid laners that are available, or at least people who are in the North American scene. So, it kind of begs the question if they are going to look overseas for a new mid laner, whether that be, a younger LEC player, maybe a
Chovy.
younger OPL player. I mean, honestly, even like, who knows? Like maybe they break the bank, or not even have to break the bank, or just sign some sort of mid-tier Korean mid laner, because they do have 2 import slots available on this roster. So that I feel like that question mark in mid lane is actually a very big deal in terms of their potential for the season. If we see, I don't know, I guess one person that hasn't really been talked about is if you put Golden Glue on this roster. Yeah, he's an alright mid laner, but do I think with Golden Glue these 5 players have like a realistic shot of winning a lot of games in the season? No, I don't. But they are solid players, But I guess, the teams have made a lot of improvements, and this team really hasn't made any.
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it, is that this team still finished somewhere like 7th or 8th or something, and there's not really too many improvements. I guess the top lane you could say is an improvement. And just for those
Yeah.
that don't know, Dignitas did announce yesterday that they were letting go of their top laner Viper, and they were letting go of both of their mid laners, being Phoenix and Froggen. So if people are wondering, well, maybe they just go back with Phoenix or Froggen, no, those guys are gone. They've let them go. They've announced that. So
Mm-hmm.
I don't know who they have in mind. You mentioned how maybe they go after a Korean import. Um, I'll say maybe, but I don't see it as being likely. and the only reason, if it's I don't see it being a mid-tier Korean mid, if that makes any sense. I would see it being a bottom tier, because if you're a mid-tier Korean player, you could probably just play in the LCK. Like, you don't need to go to Dignitas. I don't think that Dignitas is a team that so many people want to play for, really. And I also don't think that Dignitas has that deep of pockets to be able to spend. Maybe they do. I don't know. Maybe that Johnsun money was significant and they could sign Sneaky and a mid laner. But in all reality, they probably used the Johnsun money to sign Sneaky. So I don't know who they're going to go after mid, but I don't think it's going to cost them a lot, and I don't think it's going to be a huge splash, if I'm being completely honest.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't have too much more to say about this roster. The only other thing that I will put out there is, at least in my opinion, and I've said this a lot previously in our episodes, and how much myself and Blue Jay, we both really liked Lorlo, and were kind of confused on why Lorlo didn't see more play in the summer split after Viper was clearly the problem on this team. It's not exactly confirmed. I know it is, the highest possibility is that Hansard will join this team, but Dignitas already have like a solid serviceable top laner in Lorlo already on this team under contract, I do believe. So,
I think so.
Who knows? Maybe Lorlo slots into this roster, and them not having to sign somebody gives them the ability to go after a better mid laner.
The one other thing that I will say with this roster is my concern around this team is, like, how does this team, or how does this organization manage to get long-term fans? Like, I don't think you do that by just signing Sneaky for a year. Like, Sneaky is a big question mark as to how he's going to come back. Maybe he's great, and I hope he is, but he's took a year off. What if he's not? Then you had Sneaky for a year, and then all this, and then if he's too bad, you have to let him go, and then there goes all your Sneaky fans, and then you lose fans there. Or, like, how do you build a long-term fan base, or how do you even win in the long term when you're getting rid of your young prospects? Like, I don't think you do either. And so that's why it's kind of like disappointing. Like, I don't want teams to be in the league that aren't going to go for it when they get the opportunity. And that's the only thing I'll say about Dignitas, is I'm disappointed for that reason, but that's all I got to say.
All right. Next up, we got Evil Geniuses. Some new faces on EG. We got Impact in the top lane, Svenskar in jungle, Jizuke mid lane, Lost, former TSM Academy ADC as ADC, and Ignar support.
I'm pretty excited for this roster. I don't think that Impact is anything like spectacular. I think he's a good, serviceable top laner, and I don't know. Like, honestly, I actually think it's more exciting to have Huni on your team. Not that I think Huni is better, but as far as excitement levels go, I think Huni would have been more exciting. But for me, the real excitement comes in the bot lane, because I think Ignar is great. I think he's a fantastic player. I think that's a really good pickup. And I'm really happy that Lost is getting another shot. This guy's been a great AD carry in Academy. He did play in the LCS before, but I think it was only with Echo Fox, and I don't really think that was a real shot.
It was for like 5 games or something.
Yeah, like, I don't think that he really had a roster that he could perform well with and mesh with. And honestly, it's just not a real shot. To me, this is a roster that is like, you've got good players on this roster, a lot of veterans who know what they're doing. This to me is a real shot, and that's why I'm excited for this roster and for Lost.
Yeah, I actually really like what EG has sort of done over the offseason. I believe the players that they've added fixed a lot of the previous issues on this team. It kind of felt like, what we saw in the spring and summer split was Svenskar trying to plug as many holes as possible, whether that was like Kumo sort of underperforming in the top lane. Kumo was very hot and cold during the season. Sometimes he would have really amazing games, or he'd be like the focal point of the game and they'd play around him. In other games, he'd be asked to be the weak side player and he'd be getting exposed by, enemy top side of the map, whether that was for the 1v1 or the 2v2 or, many top lane dives. But I feel like Impact gives him that stability in the role where, yes, he has for the last 2 years been exclusively a weak side player. But I mean, to be honest, who knows? Like, maybe that was, because that was exactly what TL asked for, and that's all he was said to do. Because, looking back on his time on C9, like, this guy was a pretty good carry player. Insert the top die meme. It's kind of where it came from him 1v2ing people in the top lane. And who knows, maybe EG sort of brings back that style. But either way, I think they're getting a really solid upgrade in the top lane with more stability at the very minimum. And at the very maximum, potentially we see the impact of old and, getting a bit of carry play style.
One guy that I'm also really excited for in this lineup is Jizuke. Like, I think a lot of people may have forgotten, but we didn't get to see Jizuke in the summer split, or not for long enough anyway, because they had some import issues. They didn't want to play Kumo top. They decided to go with Huni. Huni was still an import, and so you couldn't play him, Bang, and Jizuke. And so with that, Jizuke had to sit for a little while. But now we're getting Jizuke back, and I want to remind people that Jizuke was like a really, really exciting player to watch. He was so fun on his split push rise, or some of the, I don't know, just the wacky picks that he would play. Really volatile mid laner. And so I don't know, he's a guy to be excited for. And I'm glad that he gets another shot in the LCS, because I feel like his first year in the LCS was, I don't want to say wasted, but for lack of a better term, we'll say sort of wasted, just because of some import issues that they ran into. So I'm
I
excited to see him in the
I
big.
would say wasted.
Okay, wasted.
Because they had people forget they had a fairly solid spring split, even though there were a lot of teams in the spring split that underperformed. You think of TL and TSM, very
So
heavily.
That's why I didn't say wasted, is because his spring split was good.
Yeah,
But like
but in the
the
summer
summer
split,
was wasted. The
this
summer was
team,
wasted
the
because it was
team
like he was
definitely
just
had a
chilling.
lot of potential, and like
Yeah.
you said, they saw a weakness in Kumo, and to fill that, they had to field Huni, who was an import, and therefore had to sub out Jizuki for Golden Glue, because they felt that Bang was, getting rid of Jizuke was better than getting rid of Bang. But to flip to the bot lane, completely agree with you. I think Lost is a player who has performed very well in Academy and deserves, I guess, what you could call another shot, because he already had LCS time, but he has yet to have a consistent off season of practice and a consistent starting role with a support player. And I think bringing in Ignar, a veteran, strong support player, to sort of pair with him will definitely, he'll help sort of bring him back into the fold of the LCS and get him on good form. So I personally, I really like what EG has done this offseason. I think they made massive improvements to their roster, and it should give Sven Skaren a lot more room to work with.
What's interesting about this roster, though, is that even though we're really excited for it and we think they made some improvements and whatnot, they lost out on so many, no pun intended, lost out, but they lost out on so many different like player acquisitions. Like, they were said to have been in the bidding, and maybe they still are, by the way. They were said to have been in the bidding for Perks and for FBI or Johnson, and clearly they didn't get these guys. So even though like there's a lot of, we talk often about who won the offseason and lost the offseason. They kind of lost the offseason for based off what they were trying to do, which was to sign Perks and FBI or Johnson. They didn't get any of those guys. Yet they still definitely came out with a really good roster despite losing the offseason, so to speak. You know what I'm saying?
I mean, I wouldn't say they lost it.
Yeah, I shouldn't really say
They
that.
more won. If the way I see it is, if you upgrade your
Yeah.
roster, you did a good job. And not to say you won the offseason, but you definitely didn't lose it. So
For our listeners, just so you know, I was putting "lost the offseason" in quotations because no. But if you ask me, did they lose the offseason? The answer is no, they did not. But again, the point is that I'm making is that they went after a bunch of players and got outbid on, it seems like, everyone almost.
yeah, overall, I definitely think EG, they'll be a solid playoff team moving into the spring split. That's kind of where I would place them.
Yeah, I would put them slightly above middle of the pack, slightly above that.
Maybe like a 4 to 6 area is where I would put them.
Yeah, that sounds accurate.
All right. Next up, we have the only team in the LCS to be fielding 5 new players on their roster. We got FlyQuest making some big moves in both directions in terms of getting rid of players and acquiring new players. They have Licorice in a top lane. Jose Diodo, if you don't know who Jose Diodo is, he was just at Worlds in the play-in stage with Rainbow 7, and was, most people would call him a standout player in terms of wildcard region teams. Palafox mid lane, Johnsun ADC, that was the news that we just recently found out, and Diamond support. And the way that this kind of all worked out was that FlyQuest got a package deal from Cloud9, which included Licorice, Palafox, and Diamond. And then obviously they acquired Johnsun from Dignitas and brought in Jose Diodo from Rainbow 7.
What another crazy lineup, right? Like, from what we saw last year, or like from what the roster that we saw that just went to Worlds, finding out that all 5 of those players weren't going to be coming back, you think, oh man, FlyQuest is in such a terrible spot. But hey, not bad, honestly. I can't believe that they were able to get Licorice and Johnson. If you would have told me that a team was able to get Licorice and Johnson, I would have assumed that it would be like a really, a team that has been known for spending money. Like, not so much FlyQuest. FlyQuest hasn't been a team to throw around the wallet a lot, but it looks like they were able to do that a little bit, and not a bad roster. I do have some worries, and but I still think it's something to be excited for if you're a FlyQuest fan.
Yeah, I think this roster, although I'm excited because they have a lot of players that I do really like and could have a lot of potential. I'm speaking in terms of potential in Jose Diodo, Palafox, and Diamond. I would say Johnsun, we've already seen him and he has played very well. So, yes, he's still a very young player, but we've seen his potential, but we have yet to see Jose Diodo, Palafox, and Diamond. But I feel like this team, they have a huge sort of ceiling and floor in terms of their potential performances.
Yes,
Like,
absolutely.
if everything goes right for this team, like if Jose Diodo comes in and kind of the form that he was on at Worlds, and Licorice is still best top NA, Johnsun is still performing very well, and Palafox and Diamond, although they've been very good academy players, they make that leap to the LCS, this team can be very good. But on the other hand, this team, I could see, honestly, this being like a 9th to 10th place team if all of Jose Diodo, Palafox, and Diamond don't work out. Like, I'm kind of seeing this team as like kind of like 100 Thieves 2.0 with they have Someday in top lane, and that's like Licorice for this team. And then the rest is kind of like, oh, well, we'll have to see how that works. Like 100 Thieves brought in Ryoma. That's kind of like their Jose Diodo. Like, will he pan out? They got like Cody Sun plus Stunt at the time, and that's kind of like Stunt being an academy player that hasn't necessarily seen LCS success, but you have a solid AD in Cody Sun. It just feels like this roster has a huge ceiling and a really low floor.
Yeah, honestly, it really is. Like, to me, I am not that sold on Jose Diodo.
Oh,
A
me
lot of
neither.
people are really hyped up on this guy, and I gotta be honest, I don't know why. He did have some good performances at Worlds, but I thought his Worlds started off really bad. I think it was his first game. I thought he was absolutely running it down, and for me to see a lot of volatility in play-ins, like play-ins is don't get me wrong, it's still good League of Legends. You're still getting some good teams from around the world, but play-ins is not that high of a level when comparing to actual Worlds when group stage starts. So I don't know, the fact that I saw him struggle a little bit in play-ins worries me. And if I'm FlyQuest, I need another jungler, man. I think that you should go after a veteran like Xmithy. I think that you should just have Xmithy be your academy jungler. And if Jose Diodo isn't working out, you can sub in a guy who's got a lot of experience that can hold his own. I think FlyQuest should definitely be looking to get another jungler. If this is your only guy, I would be very, very worried.
Yeah, I don't know. Well, to be honest, with this roster, we'll really just have to see what happens. Like, it'll be very difficult to predict, how this roster compares to others once everything gets said and done. But it's really all just about how they perform, and if past performances are an accurate representation of the level of this roster.
Yeah, and the thing is too is like you still have some veterans that are absolute studs like Johnsun and Licorice. So like the thing is this that you can rely on this team not being bad top through bottom. Like I don't think you're gonna see a CLG esque kind of team where you see them struggling in every position. Now with that said, sometimes just one guy being like a weak link on your team can drag down the rest. So that is very possible. And I think that's where you bring up the point that this is a roster that still could finish 9th, 10th because of that. But again, we have to wait and see how Palafox and Diamond perform in the LCS first as well. Like these are guys that have been hyped up so much, and they do come from probably the best farm system in the LCS. That being Cloud9, they're really good at developing players. Well, now's your time to prove it, and I'm glad to see that these guys are finally getting a shot because there's a lot of hype around them.
Mm-hmm. Anything else, or are we gonna move on to next team?
No, let's move on.
All right, next up we have the biggest question mark of a team in free agency. Now we have Golden Guardians, top lane. I guess I'm not going to even go down the whole list because the only players that we know that they got are Niels in the top lane, who they acquired from Scouting Grounds. That's correct, right?
Like a week ago, by the way.
Yeah, and a Blaze Olive in the mid lane, who I believe is their current academy mid laner, who they formerly acquired from TSM.
So here's my I got a lot of problems with this, honestly, but let's start with one thing. One of the problems that I have with this roster so far is that okay, Ablaze Olive is gonna get his shot, But like, man, is this a shot? Like we talked earlier about how Lost never really got a real shot because he played on a really bad Echo Fox team. Is this a real shot for a Blaze Olive? I don't
Yeah.
really think so. I mean, we still have to wait and see who they do sign, but all signs are pointing towards that this is going to be a rookie roster or a very inexpensive roster. And yes, I know last year Golden Guardians did do a good job of developing some players and turning what we thought was nothing, like Huni, for example, into one of the best supports in the league. Huni was fantastic. I don't know if you can replicate that again. Like that's really difficult to make happen again. And so I'm a little disappointed that a Blaze Olive gets a shot and it's with a roster that is, well, in all likeliness going to be last place, honestly. I think that most people will have Golden Guardians being 10th or 9th or 10th, honestly.
Yeah. Everyone was a bit worried and concerned when it was sort of revealed that Golden Guardians was going to be uh, trying to move the contracts of Closer and FBI, and if they were going to be able to re-sign Huhi and Demonte and even Hanser for that matter. And it kind of made people worry about what this team was going to do. And their general, I don't know, was he their general manager? Put out a Is he the GM? The guy who put
He's
out the
head of
YouTube video?
esports or
Okay.
something. You're talking about Hunter
Yeah,
Lee.
yeah.
Hunter Lee is like head of esports. I don't know his exact title. Their GM is Danon. It's someone
Oh,
else.
okay. Yeah. Their head
Hunter
of
Lee is
esports.
like head of esports, and like he's been there for quite a while. He's a really well-respected figure.
Yeah. Okay, but that guy, he put out a YouTube video pretty much outlining, answering questions about, why Golden Guardians did what they did and kind of trying to at least give some explanation on the future of Golden Guardians and how everything's going to look. And if you watch the video, we will link it in the description. But, Golden Guardians is really betting on themselves to be able to do what they did with their previous roster in terms of, getting a lot of potential out of their players or finding up and coming talent to be able to mold into potential LCS stars. But yeah, they were the 4th place team in the LCS. They're retaining none of their roster, and as of now, they're downgrading in every possible position.
It's looking a little gloomy. Okay, here I got a few things to say about this roster, so let me go off on a little bit here. So first, I do want to say Hunter Lee coming out with that video actually did help. So often when a team makes a really bad decision, they always try to make a video that, makes it feel better, and usually it doesn't work. This is one of those rare scenarios where I thought that everything Hunter Lee said was actually like, okay, he did a good job of conveying that he understands exactly how fans feel, and pretty much he said all of the questions that all the fans are thinking. Pretty much like, if you're not going to spend now, when are you going to spend? That was my first thought. And if like, those are the kind of questions that I think any fan should ask about any team. And I honestly, he did say that eventually they do plan to spend. I'm not sold on that. He says that they think that they will be able to um, recreate what they made last year. I'm not necessarily sold on that either. But the like I said, the thing that made me feel good about it was that he was able to face the music and say, "Look, I'm not going to just let our fans wonder what the hell's going on. I'm going to make a video, address the issue and just say what our situation is and tell it like it is." So I do have to give a lot of props to him for that. Um, Another thing that I want to talk about is that I did see some people giving shit to Hunter and to Danon about the moves that are being made. I need to be clear about this, or make this clear, that I do not think that this was their decision. I highly doubt that. I think they totally wanted to go for it. Why wouldn't you? If you're a GM or head of esports or whatever, even a coach, I'm sure Anero's not happy about this either. If you're any management, this is like such an exciting opportunity for you. This is what you live for, the chance to win. And I think that the owners of Golden Guardians kind of took that away from them. And the narrative that we are being fed, and I say being fed, that makes it sound like it's not true. It very well could be true, but the narrative that we are being fed as fans is that the NBA had lost a lot of money, and the Golden Guardians being owned by Golden State Warriors, obviously an NBA team, maybe they need some of that money to fund some, or to plug some of the holes that they may have created with COVID affecting the NBA so much. That's kind of what we're being told. They lost a bunch of money, so they can't spend a bunch of money. Um, while that could be true, for me, I just don't see what this, we'll say approximately $3 to $4 million that they maybe got for their rosters or for their players. I don't see what that $3 to $4 million is going to do for your team. when you're spending, we looked up the roster of how much the Golden State roster, the basketball team, how much that roster costs. It costs almost $150 million just the upcoming season. What is $3 to $4 million going to do for that? I don't know. And I'm sure there still could be other reasons or other places that $3 or $4 million needs to be spent. And so I can't say that absolutely it was wrong. All I can say is that it feels bad. And from a fan perspective, it still doesn't make sense. Maybe it does make sense behind the scenes, but we don't really see that. And it's just so depressing to see a team that so many people wanted to cheer for in the upcoming season. It's so depressing to see it all blown up and replaced with what is, honestly, if I'm being completely blunt, it is just scraps. That's what's
Yeah.
disappointing.
Another thing that Hunter Lee did mention in the video when speaking about their current roster is that the players on Golden Guardians, they wanted to all stick around and run it back for the season, and it seems that, Golden Guardians had to make that tough decision and be like, well, here's the deal, guys. With the lack of money, we're most likely not going to be able to re-sign DeMonte, Huhi, and Hansard. And I guess in terms of that, they did the nice guy thing and sort of shipping off FBI and Closer to 100 Thieves for them to be able to join up with the rest of their players. And I'm looking now more on like the business side. And if I'm the Golden Guardians, and at some point you got to recognize, like, sure, like, we can play nice. Like, this is esports. People liked it. It's kind of a players' league where players kind of get to decide what teams they're going to go if they're going to get traded. But like, at some point, like, this is a business. Like, you gotta keep assets on your team, and you got to think about the future of this team. Like, yes, although you did the nice guy move and shipping off FBI and Closer and off to 100 Thieves and then being able to run it back on 100 Thieves, like, you just gave away all your best assets to another team because you wanted to fulfill the players' needs. Like, you got to look at your own needs. Like, Golden Guardians, on all accounts right now, like, they're going to go back to being the 10th place team in the LCS. They were bottom 2 in the league for 4 splits in a row or something like that, wasn't it? Like, when they first came in franchising, they were terrible.
They've never finished with a positive win record.
Yeah,
Let's just say that.
The best record they've ever finished with was 9-9 2 times, I believe, in the summer of 2020 and the summer of 2019, or maybe it was the spring of 2019. But either way, this team has been a bottom team in the LCS. They finally got a good roster, and they sold other pieces. And yes, while Hunter Lee did lay out all their reasonings for that, at some point you really got to take a look at it and be like, hey, like, we have these good pieces and we need to do whatever we can to hold on to them, and they chose to get rid of them.
And another thing I need to highlight is, like, so as you mentioned, he said in the video that they still plan on proving everyone wrong again this year and, developing talent and stuff like that. But here's my thing. If, in fact, your coaching staff is that good at developing talent, do you not think other organizations with money are going to want them? Like, if they are, in fact, that good at developing talent, wouldn't you think another org that wants developing talent, like, I don't know, Cloud9 or 100 Thieves, are going to have those coaches play for them? Clearly, they showed that they can't bid for anything because they don't have the cash. So you're going to if you get outbid on players, I'm sure you can get outbid on coaches as well. I'm not that convinced that they're going to be able to do it again. If, like, who knows? Maybe the coaching staff loves Golden Guardians and they all want to stick around. Maybe, but I just don't think that that's an automatic thing. And I think that, I don't know. I don't think that this is a way that you can exist long term in the LCS, because if you are that good at developing players, you're going to be signed for a lot more money by other teams that have money.
I just figured it out.
What?
They're going to sign a Reaper, and then he's going to lead the charge on their new players and shit.
So there was, I heard some people, this was just Twitch chat rumors, just so you guys are
So they mean nothing is what you're saying.
Yeah, pretty much. But I have seen people say GGS Reapered, honestly, in multiple different channels. Yeah, it's GGS. Anyways, in multiple different channels. So I don't know what that's about. I haven't seen any official or let's say trustworthy source say it, but I don't know. People are hypothesizing. But again, if money's a problem, can you afford Reapered? I don't
Probably
think so.
not.
Reapered's one of the most successful coaches in the LCS history. So I don't know. I don't see it happening. I'll leave it at that.
All right. Moving on. We have another bottom-ish tier team. We got Immortals. They're running back a very new roster. The only piece that they're moving over from 2020 to 2021 is Insanity in the mid lane. Their new roster is rumored to be Revenged, who's actually been officially announced. Revenge top lane, Xerxes jungle, Insanity mid, Raze, who is the former Legacy AD carry, who we did see at the World Championship in the playing stage, and Destiny, former benched Origin support.
Oof. Had to
And
throw in the bench.
yeah,
You
and
don't
and
do 'em
also
like that.
and former Origin head coach is supposedly joining Immortals Gyoto to sort of lead their rebuilding phase.
Yeah, so
Would
look,
also
okay,
fit the rumors of getting two former Origin players.
yeah. So for me, this is like it's not a roster that you can be that excited about. I think Insanity was really fun to watch, but do I think he was a solid or a great performing mid laner? Not really. I think he was okay. He was okay at best, if I'm being completely honest. I think Xerxes is a great jungler. I think that is definitely the best acquisition talent wise. But this is a roster that should finish towards the bottom of the standings. But I want to remind people that they did come out and say that they expected to have to rebuild a roster. And so I commend them for committing to the rebuild. That's what they're planning to do. So they're going to try out some young new talent, and you got to commend them for that. And I think the idea is if just one of these pieces works out, like maybe Revenge is great, or maybe Insanity steps up and is better, or maybe Reyes is awesome. If just one of these guys absolutely pops off, you can start to build a team around that. Just like Johnsun, for example. Johnsun was a rookie, had a really good season, and a bunch of teams want him. Well, you don't have to do the Dignitas thing and sell Johnsun. You could build around Johnsun, even though they didn't decide to do that. And I think that's what Immortals is going to look to do: is try to build one really good piece, maybe two if you're lucky, and then try to build around that. And they're just going to try to develop.
Yeah, I think I just really want to compare this to the Dignitas roster and sort of the two pathways that we've sort of seen in the LCS in terms of building teams. We kind of have the old way of Dignitas with taking like recycled veterans and hoping that you make playoffs. And for me, which I personally like a lot more, the Immortals route is they recognize that they're rebuilding and they're bringing a lot of new players in with some veteran presences in Xerxes and Gyoto. Because I would still call Destiny a fairly new player. He was playing in the OPL in 2019 and went to Worlds in the playing stage 2019. So I would still call him a relatively young player. And you basically have four, projects, and if similar to Golden Guardians, if two of them hit, you have a team that you can build around.
So what I wondered, honestly, and I don't know if you know this, do you know if Race and Destiny played together before? I know they're both OPL players. Do you know if they played together?
No,
I don't
I
know
don't
that.
think so.
Okay,
Destiny, he played on Mammoth in 2019, and King was their bot lane. It was
got
his
it.
ADC who's on Cloud9 Academy, and Reyes
Okay.
was I don't know if he was on any team in 2019, but on 2020 he was on Legacy with Isles or whatever.
Yeah. And just to hype up a little bit on Revenge, did he not finish rank 1?
Maybe.
I think so. Don't quote me on that, everyone, but I do think that he finished rank 1 or at least near it. Or I know he hit rank 1 at one point during the year. So I mean, okay, solo queue doesn't mean everything, but you definitely got a guy who's at least talented mechanics wise, right? You can't hit rank 1
He's
in solo queue
currently
without being mechanically
he's
talented.
currently rank 1 on the ladder, so I think it's safe
There
to
you go.
assume he probably finished rank 1.
Okay, so there you go. And I mean, that is promising. Does solo queue mean everything? Absolutely not. But it is significant to know that you're at least getting a mechanically gifted player.
Yep. Pardon me here. I just have to pull up our next team's roster. Next up, we have Team Liquid. One of the few teams in the LCS who has some stability. Moving on from 20 to 2021, their roster is going to be Alfari in the top lane, Santorin jungle, Jensen mid lane, Tactical ADC, and Core GJ support. So the only two new players being brought to Team Liquid are Alfari in the top lane from Origin and Santorin in the jungle from FlyQuest.
So this team's just good, right? Like, let's just
Yeah,
say that. I think that that's one quick way of putting it is that this team was good and they got better. I think that Alfari was the number one top laner, or at least voted. He was number
he
one
was all
all pro,
pro.
I believe.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, number one all pro for the LEC in Europe last split. So he's definitely a really good top laner. And I think that this is a guy with so much talent. I think you're going to be really happy having him if you're a TL fan. Um, I also think Santorin was great. Let's remember, Santorin was probably the best jungler in North America towards by the time Worlds came around. I would say Santorin was number one. Didn't have the greatest showing at Worlds, I'll say. And another thing that I think TL fans should worry about a little bit is Santorin was also a very aggressive jungle earlier. And well, we just saw what happened with Broxa, who used to be that and played on a slow team. That's my worry, is that if Broxa didn't fit well with this team because he was, a little bit aggro, then shouldn't you be a little bit worried about Santorin? Maybe, maybe not. I don't know. If we're talking about on paper, just straight up improvements, yes, they did straight up improve though. Alfari is an upgrade and Santorin is an upgrade.
Yeah, it kind of just seems like if Perks and Fudge don't hit, this is the best team in the league. And if Perks and Fudge do hit, Cloud9 is the best team. I think Team Liquid, they have a very solid roster. They're easily top two. To be honest, once we get through all these teams, I would probably place, C9 and Team Liquid. I'd have them as there'd be a decent gap in between the rest of the teams. But I do think in terms of how Santorin meshes with the team when looking at Brox's performances, I do think that, I guess I should say, I should hope that Team Liquid's kind of play style will evolve with bringing in Alfari, because he's a much different top laner than Impact. Alfari is a very resource-heavy player who can still play weak side. He's great at both styles. One thing I rave about LEC top laners is their ability to play both strong side and weak side. And Alfari being the number one top lane in basically all of 2020 in the LEC, I think he does give, it gives another style to Team Liquid if they choose to run with it. I'd be really disappointed to see Alfari come in and just play the impact role. I want to see, way more aggressive top lane picks out of Team Liquid with this move. And I think that Alfari will be able to do that, and that hopefully that trickles over to, everyone else's play style.
Well, and I also want to remind people too that at Worlds, towards the end of their Worlds run, let's say, they did talk a lot about how they wish they would have started to play aggressive earlier in the tournament. And so maybe this is the team that's looking to play more aggressive next year. Maybe they thought, you know what, we should be a more aggressive team, and that's the kind of play style that we want to bring to Worlds. So maybe they go into 2021 with that mindset of, we don't want to play slow anymore. We want to start to play aggressive. And so maybe Santorin is perfect for that.
To be fair, they said that last year when they brought in Broxa, and then we got like the sleeper Broxa. So I'm just saying that. I'm not saying, maybe hopefully they've learned from their mistakes.
That's a good point though. That's a good point.
Hopefully they've learned from their mistakes, and
that's funny.
They do better.
That is a really funny and good point, because I don't remember that at all. And then honestly though, you look at the rest of the lineup, like Johnsun was great, Tactical was great, Core JJ was great. Like, you're keeping the rest of your lineup that was all really, really good. I still do think that Core JJ and Tactical need to improve their laning phase a little bit. I think people kind of looked over that because their performance in team fights and just late game was so good that I think it kind of overshadowed how their laning phase was actually a little bit weak, not significantly, but a little bit in playoffs. And so that's the only worry for them. But overall, like you said, this is a top two team, and I expect to see this team at Worlds next year.
Yep, big agree. And last up, we got Team Solo Mid, TSM. We have what people could call the biggest surprise of the offseason. We have Huni starting for TSM. We have Spica in the jungle, Power of Evil mid lane, Doublelift ADC, and another fairly large rumor that has kind of recently entered the equation, Sword Art, former Suning support. Suning just finished, second at the World Championship, joining support.
What is this lineup, man? Like, what is this? And I don't mean that in a bad way, but like, no one in the world would have ever been able to predict that this would be the 2021 roster after what we just saw in 2020.
Yeah.
Like, you wouldn't think that they would replace Broken Blade with Huni. Like, who even thinks of that? No one knew that Bjergsen was retiring. That was all very sudden. And then PoE is going to take his spot. And then Suning is good. Well, I guess not Suning letting go of Sword Art. That's not that surprising. But Sword Art leaving China to come all the way to North America and play with Doublelift as the bot lane is like, what? Like, this is like this is just crazy news. And honestly, this is another team for me, really high ceiling, really low floor. Obviously not as low. Like, I'm not talking FlyQuest levels of low, But for a team with this many big names, still think that the floor is relatively low for what is honestly a roster of just veterans that have had a lot of success in the past.
Yeah, would like to point out that Sword Art, just in terms of other rosters that we've talked about, Sword Art is one of the players who, the rumor is not as strong as a bunch of the other ones. So, it's not like we are, in this case, working under the assumption that this would be the TSM roster, but it's not, known as
People
much
may
as
listen to
other
this a couple
things.
days from now, but as of right now, Sword Art
Yeah.
is about a 50% confidence on Travis Gafford's predictions, which I do have to give him props. So far, he's been right about everything. I'm not even exaggerating. He's been right about absolutely everything. So I mean, hey, that's a pretty good that's reliable. I want to say, but yeah, to your point, it's not a for sure thing yet.
Um, what was I gonna say? Oh yeah. The thing that I wonder with this TSM roster, if this is the roster, like, what is their style?
Yeah, I know. I
Like
don't freaking
what's
know.
like what's going on here? Like, I can't tell if it's gonna because Doublelift is obviously a player who demands resources, and then they have
You can
Huni,
say that
who
about
is a player
everybody,
who
man.
demands resources, and Power of Evil, a player who demands a lot of jungle attention to keep his lane safe, so he can farm up and scale for late game. So
Yeah.
like like with Power of Evil teams, like he wants the jungler to sit around mid lane to make sure that he's protected, but at the same time, you look at Huni and he's recently been known as a bit of a coin flip player, and if he's going to be straight up on the 1v1, I don't want coin flip odds in my top lane, and then how does Doublelift fit into this whole equation? And honestly, how does Sword Art fit into this whole equation? Like, he like we don't exactly still know if this is going to be what's going to
Yeah.
happen, but like how is the Doublelift Sword Art play style going to kind of play out? Sword Art isn't necessarily known as like a super aggressive support. I guess what I'm comparing him to is Core JJ. He's not Core JJ. He's not as good as Core JJ. He's not as aggressive as Core JJ, and he doesn't have as big a champion pool as Core JJ. So if you look at this roster, it's kind of like he's doubles playing with a worse spot lane than previously on Team Liquid. They have a worse mid lane than prior with Bjergsen, and they have, in my opinion, a worse top lane than before in Broken Blade. So, although support is technically an upgrade from what they had, they're kind of downgrading in both top and mid lane. And like we sort of mentioned, like there is like disaster potential, I think, on this roster.
Here's one thing I want to say though, and a lot of people aren't gonna like this, but I do think there is some truth to it. Before we started our stream, I was watching Kobe's stream, and Kobe was saying he's like, I don't. He said that he doesn't personally think that PoE is much of a downgrade in comparison to Bjergsen, and honestly, I actually agree. Like, you could call it a downgrade. I would agree with a very slight downgrade, but nothing more than that. PoE is still a really good mid laner, and he's continued to carry every single team that he's been on since joining the LCS, and maybe even in Europe as well. Honestly, he was great on Misfits. But think about the teams that he played with. He played with Optic, who had a really rough roster, and he still managed to carry wins on that team. He played on CLG, did the same thing. He played on FlyQuest, did the same thing. Like, this guy is awesome. Maybe I shouldn't say that the FlyQuest lineup was weak because they weren't that bad. Like, comparing them to the Optic roster that he played with is just not fair. But my point being is that even though maybe it's a little bit of a downgrade, it's not a hole in your lineup. Like, you can expect Power of Evil to show up and be a reliable mid laner. Where I don't think you can rely is actually with Doublelift or Huni. And I know the Huni one is obvious. We talked about how he's kind of coin flip, he's super aggressive. That's nothing new. What's new is the Doublelift thing. Doublelift did not have a good season 10. Like, he had a pretty rough 2020. And I know a lot of people are going to say, well, he wasn't motivated for spring. Sure, totally fair. But he wasn't very good in summer either. Was he awful? No. He was a lot better in summer than he was in spring, but he still wasn't the level that we've seen Doublelift play in the past. And so I don't think I can go into 2021 just being like, yep, Doublelift is going to be Doublelift and everything's going to be all right. Like, I think that he needs to reprove himself again, and he's going to have to do it with a support that could have some language barrier. I will say Sword Art's English is pretty good. I've seen it, but there will be a little bit of a language barrier, and honestly you just have to learn to gel as well. Like, it takes time to get used to playing with a bunch of new players, and these are all new players for the most part.
Yeah, the way that I see this TSM roster is it's just a temporary roster. The way that I see it is it's put up or shut up time for Doublelift. If he's still Doublelift, and if he's still gonna if he returns to like his former self in terms of lane dominance, everyone else is trash, smash everybody else in lane, and play through me and we'll win the game. Or if we see more of like the Spica / Power of Evil show in terms of like mid jungle synergy and playing through that, because like I don't know, I just don't see like this roster specifically. I don't see it being a long term thing, and I kind of see it more that like with this roster, like I've said, I see a lot of boom or bust potential, and they'd spend a year and see what works. Like maybe Doublelift returns to his former self, then it's okay. We're gonna build around Doublelift, and we'll keep Sword Art, and then we'll find other pieces to better complement Doublelift, or they get the version where Spica is like really pop off jungler. He has he's like a Blabber 2.0 kind of thing, and then they build around Spica, or they build around mid jungle, or again, most unlikely scenario out of them all is Huni returns to his former self and you build around Huni or something like that. But the way that I see this roster, it's just a temporary roster, and I foresee TSM just building off whatever is good from this next year, and that's kind of the direction they're going to move with like the Bjergsen head coach. Because the way that I see it is, we need to give the players and the team time.
Yeah, and well, another thing that I want to bring up is this roster could have some of the issues that we saw Evil Geniuses face with having 2 imports. Let's say Huni doesn't work out, who's your backup? You can't import another top laner. What if Doublelift isn't Doublelift again? You can't import another 80 carry. With having 2 imports, like you're kind of stuck with this.
Yeah.
Maybe they keep Biofrost and he plays Academy, so maybe like I don't know, Bio goes back in, but then now you've signed Sword Art and you're playing Biofrost. Like that is not a situation you want to be in.
Yeah.
And so even though I think that there's potential for TSM to be a good team and even a contender and maybe even go to Worlds, why not, right? Yeah, definitely a lot of question marks, and I would be worried if I'm a TSM fan. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, I wouldn't like I wouldn't be like, if I was a TSM fan, I wouldn't go into this 2021 season like, okay, we're gonna do well. I'd be like prepared for like I would say be prepared for the worst with this roster.
And I just also want to say that this is Power of Evil's last year of being an import. So if you say it's temporary, maybe next year they go out and look for an import top laner once Power of Evil becomes resident. That's also possible, but we're getting really, really ahead of ourselves with that. So I won't get into that too much more.
All right, that we've been through all the teams, and that does beg the question, Blue Jay, which team won the offseason?
So hold on. Before we get to that, I did want to just give. I just wanted to give a quick little list of the players, just so our listeners know what players are available that are no longer in the LCS, because there is a significant amount of players that we just saw play, and well, I don't think they're going to be on a team. So just I'm going to go through this list really quick. Give me 30 seconds here. We got Ruin in the top lane. He's gone. Lorlo probably sticking in Academy. Viper's gone. Kumo's gone. Solo, we don't know where he's going. Poncer maybe going to Dignitas, but if not, then I don't know where he's going. Alorum, he seems to be gone. Then in the jungle, you got Meteos. He doesn't have a team. Contract still doesn't have a team as far as we know. Wiggly, I doubt we'll see him on a team, but he doesn't have a team. Acadian and Xmithy, I still think that there's a chance he could join a team. I still think FlyQuest should go after him, but still no word on Xmithy. In the mid lane, we got Ryoma. Don't know where he's going. Golden Glue, he got released by Evil Geniuses. Froggen and Phoenix are both released from Dignitas. By the way, I think the Froggen one is really interesting because like this guy has a really long career. This could be the end of Froggen's career, and it's like it's not even like he's going out on retirement. It's that he's going out with no team wanting him, which is kind of sad. So that's a little interesting. In the 80 carry role, Cody Sun is still available. I think teams should be looking to get Cody Sun. I think that he's a very good backup plan. And I'm going to predict this with Cody Sun. I think he will be on a 2021 roster before the season is over. I don't know when, I don't know who, but I think this guy is still too good. And I think that even though he had a rough 2020, I think that he played with Stunt and Poom, which were 2 really bad supports. And so I don't think Cody Sun is done. Cody Dunn, Kick W. I'm still waiting to see where he goes. But anyways, he's on the list. Stixay, we don't know where he's going, if anywhere. Altec, Apollo, Rip Apollo. He's been around for a long time and definitely could be on a team, but we don't know for him. And then King looks like he might stick with Cloud9. Not too sure about that. And then finally the support role, Zazel. Don't have a team for him yet. Hakuho, he's been around for a while. Don't have a team for him. And then Biofrost. We mentioned maybe he sticks with TSM Academy. Not sure, but so far these are guys that are not in starting positions, and that is a lot of names for guys that all played in the LCS last year, and probably won't, except I guess King did not, and maybe definitely didn't either. But some notable names of guys that aren't going to be in the LCS for now.
Yeah, the only other one that I would throw in there is Treats. I would
Yes, he's.
I
Sir, go ahead.
I would think that if TSM is going to pick one of those supports to keep and maybe throw an academy, I would rather it be Treats than Biofrost, just because.
We already know where Treats is going. Or sorry, it's been reported.
Huh?
Where did he get? We know this. I don't remember
I haven't
where.
seen
I'll
anything
find it,
about this.
before the end of the episode. I know that he's rumored to go somewhere. I'll figure out who it is. I think I put it somewhere in our Discord, but I'm forgetting where it is now. But I'm pretty sure Treats is going somewhere. If you want to look that up, go ahead and look that up. Let's get into the. You asked me a question before I had to cut you
Oh,
off.
okay, I got it. Sorry. You're right. SK in the LEC.
Yes.
You're right. I did actually see that.
Yeah.
Yes. That's
yeah.
correct.
So sorry about that. And sorry
Okay,
for-
scrap that idea.
Yes. That's out the window. Sorry for cutting you off. You asked me who won the off season.
Yeah, tell me who won
Let's
it.
get into that. I think 100 Thieves won the off season. And let's be clear about this. There's a lot of different teams that won the off season. I personally, and maybe J&T as well, but I personally am going on who made the most improvements, who went from, nothing to a lot, and I think that's 100 Thieves. I think that you could argue Cloud9 won the offseason and TL won the offseason and so on and so forth. But to me, the biggest improvement is got to be 100 Thieves. This team was in the dumps. I think 100 Thieves fans were worried about whether this team was even going to, ever make any moves and try to make a push. We clearly learned this year, yes, they still want to be relevant. Yes, they want to win, and they've got a good roster, and I think they have a chance of winning. So for me, 100 Thieves winning the offseason.
I agree. But
That's who
I
you got.
had EG as second, just because I figured that we were both going to say 100 Thieves. But I actually, I mentioned it before when we were in the EG segment, but I really liked all their free agent moves. I think, the way that I sort of see this roster playing out in terms of what style they're going to go for and, the overall level of success that I can see from this team, I actually think EG will perform very well. So I have them as second.
Especially with their bot lane that struggled, honestly. Like, you could
Yeah.
tell Bang
Bang-
didn't want to be there.
Dude,
And Zazel wasn't too great either. So, like...
Bang is like playing LCS games with his legs on the chair and like
Yeah.
perma like face palming, and like he looked so sad whenever like you just like look at Bang's face cam and he'd die or like they'd lose a
He
game.
did not
Like,
look like he wanted to be there, which is not a good sign, right?
yeah.
So, anyways, yeah, replacing him with Lost and replacing Zazel with Ignar to me is definitely going to be an upgrade for EG. So I think that's fair to say they won the offseason as well.
And then this one's kind of obvious, sadly, but which team lost the offseason? And we don't need to reiterate it.
Do we
but
need to say it?
Yeah, we do.
Should we even say the team? Go for it.
It was Golden Guardians.
Wah, wah, wah.
Not much else
I
to
don't know
say.
what to say.
Like,
Yeah.
they lost. They're gonna most likely go from the fourth best team to the last place team.
Maybe Immortals is worse. Maybe FlyQuest is worse.
Nah,
Probably
I don't think
not.
so. Yeah.
Okay, next.
Okay. For our Popoff and Beansoup this week, we're gonna go with our Popoff being what we believe was the best roster move of the offseason so far, and the worst roster move. So I'll kick it off with
Okay, go for
a
it.
fairly obvious one, but I have a backup in case we both had the same one. I got Perks to Cloud9.
Okay.
If you bring the second best player in the LEC and get him on your team, I think that is by far and away the best move.
Yeah, so I actually didn't go with Perks just because of the things that I mentioned earlier, like we've heard the best in the West stuff before, and like there could be some issues of synergy and whatnot. Do I think it's a great move? Of course I do, right? Like, it is absolutely a good move. But for me, I went somewhere else. I actually went with FlyQuest picking up Johnsun. I've said on this show a million times how valuable I think Johnsun is. I think he's awesome. I actually did not expect FlyQuest to get Johnsun. I thought for sure he was going to go to Evil Geniuses, and I was really excited for that. But I'm excited that Johnson's going to get off of a team that doesn't seem like they're interested in winning. No offense to Dignitas, but it just looks like Dignitas is interested in freaking Twitter impressions and whatnot. So I'm really, really happy that Johnsun doesn't have to be on a roster that doesn't look like they're ever going to go for it. And so, yeah, I think this is an amazing signing, and I think FlyQuest, despite having their whole roster ripped away, like to me, this was so obvious that they were going to lose the offseason. They were definitely the winners of the losers, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, it kind of
And I
felt
think this
like
was the best, honestly.
it kind of felt like what Golden Guardians like is right now. Everyone thought that that's what FlyQuest was going to be. Like it was going to be like they're just going to get like whoever the fuck, and like we're going to like it's going to be like so up in the air, and this is going to be 10th place team. But you know, like you just said, like they managed to do a good job despite losing their entire roster. They got a solid player in Licorice. They got two potential standout academy players, and they got Johnsun. And who knows if Jose Diodo is going to work out, but we'll have to see.
Still need a jungle, but yeah, maybe we'll see.
Who you got for your bean soup?
I mean, it's Golden Guardians again. I didn't know how to get. Where else? What else do you do, man?
Yeah,
I don't know. You tell me.
Yeah, I got two just in case.
Okay, good.
So my first one, I had Huni going to TSM, mainly because, in my opinion, and in a lot of people's opinions, Huni is just a straight up downgrade over Broken Blade, and TSM actively going out of their way to acquire Huni by getting rid of Lost, who's like an asset in this league and a player who will have future value. For Huni, I don't see it at all. It was it's very interesting to find out that they were never really in the bidding war for Licorice, and they, as we can tell, they never went after Impact, or who knows, maybe it was just that Impact didn't want to join this TSM roster, but who doesn't, like, I don't know.
So the issue that I have, it's not even so I think we totally agree here, but I just want to emphasize a little bit more. It's not even so much that you went after Huni, it's that you didn't go after Licorice. Or it's not even that you got rid of Broken Blade because you needed to free up an import slot. If you're going to go PoE and Sword Art, you got to get someone who's no longer going to take up an import slot. But why are you being outbid by FlyQuest for Licorice? You're TSM,
Yeah.
That's what I don't get.
And then my second one that I had was kind of one we've already touched on just a small bit, was no team going after Xmithy. This is a player who, what is he, tied for second in terms of all-time like LCS trophies? He has 6. Is that correct? 6?
He's up there. I know that.
He's got about 5 or 6, and to hear that no team has gone after him, and including Immortals themselves actually dropping Xmithy, was very, very surprising to me. I think you mentioned before that FlyQuest should look to pick up Xmithy as a backup plan if Jose Diodo fails. I completely agree with that. Any team that is running a rookie jungler, or like a new prospect in terms of jungle, they should hire, or they should sign Xmithy as their academy jungler to serve as their backup. As we know now, the LCS is 1 season long, and if Jose Diodo doesn't work out, like, you need a backup plan if you want to actually try to make a playoff push.
So a couple of things, though, just to play devil's advocate, is Xmithy did have a down year. If we're being totally fair, though, he was on a pretty bad team, so I don't think that you could throw all of the down year on Xmithy specifically. I don't think it's totally his fault. But the other thing is, Xmithy is an old player. Maybe he hasn't announced, but maybe he wants to retire. Maybe he's like,
maybe.
I'm done. That's very possible as well. Just kind of playing devil's advocate there.
Yeah, no, that
do I
makes
think
sense.
he's done? No, and like you said, I think that FlyQuest should go after him. Maybe Golden Guardians as well, since they don't have a jungler yet. But yeah, I think Xmithy's still an LCS jungler, and he belongs in the league. So someone should get him.
Big agree. We're going to now stay on the topic of free agency, but move to a couple of different places around the world. Just give, for the people who haven't been following the rest of free agency around the world and have been exclusively focusing on North America, we'll just give you the quick rundown of a bunch of major players that are going to be, either are free agents or could be playing on different teams next year. First up, the biggest one I think most people would assume is that Reckless has not re-upped his contract with Fnatic and is set to be a free agent, with G2 being the favorite to sign him. So G2, if they somehow manage to pull this off where they bring all the cash in for Perks and then they're able to land Reckless after that, who I think, at least I would consider Reckless an upgrade over Perks this year specifically, not last year. I think Perks was better than Reckless last year, but this year Reckless was better than Perks. Absolutely. And that would be correct.
Yeah, no, the only worry that I now have is if you start taking all the best players away from Fnatic again, like you took Caps, now you take Reckless, like who are you going to compete with? Like who's going to be your practice, throughout the year? That's the one thing that I'm concerned with. Like every year it's always G2 and Fnatic and they're neck and neck for competing and they're always really good, but if there's only one real good team, we saw what happened to Cloud9 this year when there was only one real North American threat. Well, they ended up falling off because they didn't really have that great of practice. Kind of got to wonder if that could happen to G2 as well, but in the end I still think G2 is going to be back at Worlds and be another team that could compete for a championship.
Yeah,
if I'm being
one
honest.
thing that I will add is I'll jump down the list a little bit here but it does tie into our point about Reckless, is that Niski is now rumored to join Fnatic as their new mid laner for the 2021 season, and reportedly one of Reckless's asks was for Niski.
How funny is that? Well, Reckless asks for Niski and then dips.
Well, no, but the point that I'm trying to make is just because Reckless is a free agent, and although he did not re-sign a contract with Fnatic, does not mean that he is 100% sure to leave Fnatic.
Right.
Like there's still the chance that he can just test free agency, see what's out there, see what other teams are going to offer him, and then come back to Fnatic. But I do think that if Fnatic wants to keep Reckless and potentially not let G2 snag him up, signing Niski is a good start to that.
Well, and also on our list, to go down the list again, but I mean, it's Fnatic related, is Hylissang re-signed with Fnatic, right?
Yeah.
So we saw Reckless and Hylissang were very, very good at Worlds this year. I need to, okay, Fnatic didn't have the greatest showing as a team. They were good, not great, but their bot lane was insane. And so I think that there's a good chance that Reckless wants to reunite with his boy in the bot lane,
Yeah. Okay. We'll go down the list now. Pretty big news. Our world champion winners, Damwon, two of their players, Nuguri and Beryl, are free agents. So we'll kind of just have to wait and see if they end up re-signing with Damwon, and if Damwon is gonna, make the push to potentially do the SKT and win, be the only other team to win multiple world championships, or if other teams are gonna have, they're going to just throw a bunch of money at him and try to get him away from Damwon.
And that's here's the thing. They're free agents, so they could just be testing the market to get them the most mucho bucos.
What?
They want some dollar bills. That's all
mucho
it is. There's a chance. Yeah. There's a chance that they just re-sign with Damwon and they run it back. I want to remind people that this team was really freaking good, man. They were hands down the best team at Worlds, and pretty much everyone and their dog knew that they were going to win Worlds. It was predicted fairly early that they were the favorites once we saw just a little bit of weakness out of top esports.
Yeah.
So, I mean, there's a good, who doesn't want to win Worlds again? I know I would. And I'm sure that they could make money while doing it. So we'll see. I don't know exactly the LCK politics and whatnot, and I don't know how all the money works around there, but my guess is they're testing the market. They're going to get a good fat contract, and they're going to run it back and be another competitive team.
Yeah, more Damwon news. Koma, former SKT/T1 coach, is joining Damwon as the head coach of League of Legends.
For Mucho Bucos?
Yeah, probably. That sounds, yeah. He did have he had a 1-year stint on Vici in China, and obviously didn't go well. I don't know a ton about the bottom tier LPL teams, but for him to come back to the LCK and join the World Championship winners, it must have not gone that well.
Yeah, he's back.
He's back, baby.
Back to crack the whip.
More just to finish off our Korean news from DRX, Doran, Chovy, Deft, and Carrier are all set to be free agents, and I actually did see a Reddit post this morning that their jungler Piosik, who's I believe still under contract, he was very sad to hear the news that
Oh, I
all of his
watched that.
teammates were going to be free agents and that he hasn't actually seen them since Worlds, and if they don't like stay with the team, how he's probably not going to see them for a long time, and he was really sad, and it was sad.
It was so Hollywood. It was touching. It was
Yeah.
like I felt like I was watching a movie, even though it was just a Twitch clip. But he basically was like, "I never got to say goodbye," and I'm like, "Oh,
Oh.
like, oh, feels bad, man."
All right, to then flip back to the LEC, a couple things close it out. Broken Blade, former TSM top, is supposedly joining Schalke to replace Urwamne. Pretty solid. I do think that Broken Blade will have on par, if not better, performances in the LEC than the LCS, because the LEC is much more willing to play more strong side, weak side, as opposed to North America, who is pretty exclusively a weak side. They're a weak side region in terms of their top lane play style. So I'm actually excited for that signing. I think Schalke is, they're moving in the right direction for sure after making their whole miracle run. Gilius finally maintaining a starting spot on a team and not like getting benched. Abadage is apparently his nickname is like, was it like
Faker
Faker Dogge or something like that? I don't know. He played decent, I
People do
guess.
that with every player, man. They just find a way to throw Faker in there
Yeah.
somewhere. Like Faker Dogge
Yeah.
sounds so fucking stupid. Anyway.
Yeah, and then last up, back to, I guess, to flip back to Fnatic, we come full circle here. But Yamato Cannon is leaving Sandbox Gaming. He was the first Western coach to coach a Eastern team. Is joining Fnatic as the new head coach, and that kind of Mithy's status is now up in the air. It's not really exactly confirmed if he's leaving Fnatic or if he's staying or what team he's potentially going to join. So we'll just have to see how it all plays out. And there's
more Twitch chat rumors for that one.
I was just going to say that there is the rumor that if this is a very broad rumor that I think Jacob Wolf posted about, and it's not like, even though when you hear Jacob Wolf stuff, you think, oh, okay, it's going to happen. But it was even a rumor from Jacob Wolf, and he said that if Perks kind of ends up on C9, that there might be the chance Mithy goes there because then they'll have Perks and Sven and whatnot. But let's hear your Twitch chat rumor.
No, that's what I saw. That's what I saw in Twitch chat was that Mithy could possibly go to C9, but I didn't see it from any reliable source, so I didn't know Jacob Wolf talked about it. That gives it a little bit more confidence. If you were to give it a confidence percentage, maybe you got a 25%.
He did explicitly say like, this is just a rumor. Like, I don't know, but we're done with all the free agency talk. We'll move on to our quick news. Not a ton of quick news, as most of the news has been taken up by free agency. But I'll throw it over to you to give us the rundown of the Scouting Grounds draft.
Yeah, so I mean, I know a lot of you might not even know that Scouting Grounds happened because, well, if I'm being completely blunt, no one gave a fuck. Like, dude, the LCS did a really bad job of promoting it, and I think there was even a post on Reddit about that.
Yep, I read that.
Honestly, it was happening. Like, you and I follow the LCS very closely. I forgot that it was happening. Like, there was just no talk about it. There was no hype about it. But regardless, the draft results are in. So I'll just go top down. The first pick was Immortals. They drafted Tony Top. Second pick, CLG. They drafted Yeon or Yon. I don't know how to say it, but something like that. Dignitas was third pick. They took Copy. Golden Guardians, they took Niles. We told you that Niles is probably going to be starting for top lane, so they used their draft pick, and looks like they're going to be playing him. EG got Tomio. Golden Guardians got Yunbi. Cloud9 took Shady with the 7th pick. TL with the 8th pick took Spawn, which is kind of like haha, because for those that don't know, Spawn, the OPL Spawn is going to be coaching TL Academy, so Spawn drafted Spawn, haha. And then Fly with the 9th pick, they took NXI. I don't know if it's Nixie or I don't know. And then TSM took Shoryu, which we saw. I'm pretty sure he played for. Did he play for
Team
TL?
Liquid?
Okay, yeah. In Academy last year. So I don't know. I guess he's just being drafted to another team. TSM sees something in him, I suppose. So they drafted him, and that's your draft picks, your 1 through 10.
I just got the feeling that if this Copy guy like ever sees like LCS time or even Academy time and he's on stream, like people are just gonna spam like copy paste or like control C. I don't know. I just have like that feeling. Like,
what I thought you were gonna say. I thought you were gonna say like if he makes it to Dig and is actually a good player, that they're just gonna sell him. Is what I thought you were gonna say.
Oh nah, I was just like thinking of like copy paste memes or some shit like that.
Yeah, I could see that happening. Twitch chat isn't very original. Like it's very,
Yeah.
very EU wacky teeth. That's Twitch chat for you.
Yeah. You kind of already touched on it, but Team Liquid has been making a lot of moves in their coaching staff. You just mentioned how Spawn, the former OPL caster, is joining Team Liquid as the head coach for their academy team. So another sort of casting talent is being brought in to coach an academy team. We've kind of seen this a few times in the past with Raz, and there's one other one. I'm forgetting who it is, but there was another one I remember.
Who we done? Which one did we say already? Did we say
I just said
what do we got? I got them here.
no. I,
Okay.
I I just said how there's in the past there's been former casters that have joined LCS teams to coach
Oh,
their
my
academy
mistake.
team, like Raz, who coaches Golden Guardians Academy, and I believe
I
there's one other, but I just don't know who it is.
I got distracted. Sorry, I was trying to read who they got as their coaches, so I
Oh,
wasn't listening.
well,
If I'm being completely honest.
to list off the new Team Liquid coaches, Cold, the former jungler for Origin, will be joining Team Liquid on their coaching staff, and we did mention this in a previous episode that he actually joined Team Liquid specifically to work with Broxa during their Worlds boot camp. So kind of seemed like his good work earned him a job on Team Liquid. We also have Yalt, a relatively unknown person. To be honest, I have no clue who this is. Did
Yeah,
you?
neither do I. If I'm
Okay.
being honest,
Well, he's joining as their head analyst, so numbers in that.
I'm sure he's got some decent resume. You don't just come out of nowhere.
Yeah.
I'm sure he's probably played for another, coached or played for another team or something.
Yep.
I don't know what it is.
And then Dodo is going to be transitioning to a general manager role, and Kane, TL Kane, their former head coach, is officially out of Team Liquid. So
Yeah.
Jat has got his whole coaching staff now.
Yep. Jat's running show. Nice.
Yeah, kind of good for
What
Jat,
else we
man.
got? Yeah, well, here's the thing. They actually did a little interview with the stuff, and basically, he compared it to like in traditional sports, how like a lot of times with a new coach will come in and he'll bring in his guys. Well, these are his guys.
Yeah,
So
Jat does do a lot of comparisons to traditional sports, just
yeah,
in
he
general.
does.
I like
He's a
that.
really big basketball guy. So
And then last up, have some more news slash expansions on the T1 drama and their rumored coaching staff and whatnot. So they've officially announced. I don't know if I have this name right. Danny. I don't know if that's right. As their head coach, Zepha to coach the main team. But head coach, I mean all of T1. Like they specifically announced that this guy is going to be basically overseeing the whole League of Legends operation, whereas Zepha, who is going to be returning on their coaching staff, is going to be the main coach of the main team, obviously, the team with Faker on it, the one that matters. And Bengi, former SKT player, you could argue in terms of old-style League of Legends, is one of the best players of all time for that. He's going to be joining as their academy coach. And obviously, that leaves LS out of this whole announcement. So kind of just to expand a little bit more on this T1 drama with LS, for the people that don't know, I'll quickly summarize it. Effort, the current T1 support, leaked his Discord on stream, and it was said that LS was going to be joining T1 on the coaching staff, to which they received a lot of flame from the majority of the Korean community due to their views and opinions on LS, and they thought that he was going to ruin Faker, and it was going to ruin Faker's last hurrah as a professional player and whatnot. So basically, LS just got a huge amount of flame from the majority of the League of Legends, but mainly Korean scene, and kind of went completely dark on Twitter and off social media. And according to a couple Reddit posts from Michaela, one of his good friends, he's really depressed and not in the best mental state. But the T1 organization is also really receiving a lot of flame due to their handling of the situations, and apparently T1 fans, or I don't know if it's T1 fans, just people in general, have, they paid for a digital truck to drive around like a T1 corporate building, saying talking shit about the company. And they just recently reactivated their Twitter account after deactivating it a few days prior due to the amount of hate they were receiving. Safe to say, this whole situation is just so fucked.
yeah, it's messed up, and honestly, it's sad. There's no real good reason for a fan base to be like that, and honestly, it feels so sad that it sounds like maybe the fan base won as well. by doing just some stupid shit. Like it sounds like they won by not having LS become coach, whereas like it looked like he was maybe lined up to be the coach, and it also like apparently LS's grandma was getting
Yeah.
threats. Like what is that? What is that?
Yeah, stop that.
So that's what's really disappointing is that like they're gonna get what they want because they decided to be assholes. But do I blame LS? Absolutely not. Of course not. When your family starts to get involved, like you're he's probably thinking, look, like flame me all you want, like I can handle it. But once it starts to affect my family, then I got to think about what decisions I'm making, and that could be the reason why. I don't really know, but it's just it's really disappointing, and I think it's just sad news to come out of the League of Legends scene.
Yeah. Oh, we ended on a bit of a sad note. But
Yeah, what a sad way to end it.
that'll wrap it up for episode 24 of the Clown Fiesta podcast. Just want to shout out all the people who watch on the live stream or on the YouTube or on any of the audio only platforms. We really appreciate it. We have been noticing, at the minimum, we're getting the same amount of people that keep coming back. So just to all you people that are, recurring viewers and, tune in on a weekly basis to listen to us, we really appreciate it. Again, any feedback that you have, feel free to drop it down on any of our socials at Tuminator, at BlueJay. Give us any constructive criticism that you want. Throw down a YouTube comment. All of it helps. We care about you guys.
Yeah, we cannot say enough how happy we are. Like, it's exciting for us, okay? Like, we'll level with you guys. I'll tell you guys right now what our viewership looks like. We get about 50 viewers on YouTube every week and about 25 listeners on the different podcasts like Spotify or Apple Podcasts and stuff like that. So we're getting about 75 viewers slash listeners every week. And honestly, that's not a huge amount of people, but it's something that we're still really proud of, and we're so happy that you guys continue to come back and listen every week. We didn't think anyone was going to want to listen to us. We really weren't sure, and clearly, there's some people from all around the world as well that listen. We were looking at the different demographics of the people that listen. We got people from everywhere. Do you remember the different countries that we have listeners from, JNT?
I don't know. It was like Canada, U.S., Norway, Finland, Sweden. I remember maybe.
We had some Australia
Yeah.
representation as well
Shout
that
out all
every
you
so often.
international lot.
Like, guys, it's freaking awesome that we have you guys coming back every weekend. I don't think we could say it enough just how much we appreciate you guys. The other thing that I want to say is that there is a good chance, and stop me if I'm wrong, JNT, but there's a good chance that this is our last episode of 2020. Um, I know before I said that it was possible because we weren't sure how free agency was going to look and stuff like that. Most of the rosters are pretty much done. If just looking at the list here, we've given you guys pretty much what we think the rosters are going to look like. And if there is no major shakeup, I don't know if we're going to have an episode in 2020. What I
Yeah.
can say is that if there is a lot of news and there is enough to do an episode, absolutely we will. But usually things start to settle down once free agency's kind of figured out, right?
Yeah, barring any huge free agency changes in terms of like North American like projections or like any big League of Legends news, like I guess to put things into perspective, like unless something as big as like the OPL changes happen or something like that, like don't expect us to cover like small little things. Like when we want to make an episode, we want to make sure that it's worth your time to listen to the full episode. And like we've said before, we don't want to spam you guys with like small 10 to 15 minute episodes on a
Right.
like a bi-daily or like weekly basis.
Yeah. But hey, like we do have every intention of coming back for 2021, and clearly we're excited. If we didn't see, like all the talk that we had about the LCS rosters coming up in 2021, this stuff is hype. And
Yeah.
so we learned a lot doing this podcast just for our first season or whatever you call it. And yeah, thanks again. I can't say thanks enough. And be sure to follow and sub on YouTube and all that crap so that once we do start making content, it is available to you guys.
Yeah, hit that like button.
All right. If you don't have anything else to shout out, we good, JNT?
Yeah, we good.
All right. So thanks again, everyone, for listening. And this has been episode 24 of the Clown Fiesta podcast. See you guys in 2021.